Spyro: A Hero's Tale was developed by Eurocom using their new custom-built engine they called Engine X. This engine, like many others, had a feature to add extra scripting code to any object in a level. In Engine X, these are called game scripts, and they are written in a custom scripting language that is interpreted at runtime. For an earlier Eurocom game, Sphinx and the Cursed Mummy, we have access to some original development tools and source files, so we can see how the game scripts worked. For A Hero's Tale, we're not so lucky. However, a while ago I wrote a tool that decompiles the game scripts into human-readable code, which lets us see further behind the scenes. In A Hero's Tale, the game scripts are mostly used for NPCs, stuff like how they react to the player, which cutscenes to play, displaying the button prompt, and so on. Through inspecting the game scripts, I found a few weird oddities and mistakes, which I'd like to share with you today. In Dragon Village, you can find a secret entrance to the professor's lab. Speaking to the professor, he basically tells you that he's busy and shows you the door.
Show you the not-so-secret exit.
Speaking to him again, he'll say a banter line about cloning himself.
Maybe I should just invent a machine that invents a clone of myself.
Normally, that's all you'll hear. But when I was looking at his game script, I noticed that there's a cutscene that will never play during normal gameplay. This is because it only plays if you've not defeated Nasty Nork and if you've not learned double jump yet. Of course, you can't reach the secret lab entrance without double jump. If we use glitches to reach the professor before learning double jump, now after he opens the door and we speak to him again, he'll say this.
I'm kind of busy sciencing right now. Why don't you go to the swamp and bug the dragon elder there?
So that's cool. It's possible that earlier in development you didn't need double jump to reach the secret entrance. But based on what he's saying here about going to the swamp, my guess is that they simply meant to check for the pole spin ability instead of double jump. This would have made the cutscene play if you haven't visited Elder Magnus yet, and would give the player a hint on where to go next. Just a theory though. Anyway, let's take the professor's advice and visit Elder Magnus, which is just as well because he also has an unused cutscene in his game script. When you speak to Magnus for the first time, he teaches you pole spin, and you're given a task in the task list, telling you to search his treehouse for a light gem, and maybe other secrets too. If you speak to him again, he'll just give you a reminder on using pole spin.
Don't forget, Spyro, to pole spin you only need to jump onto a pole!
You might assume that this task is cleared when you grab the light gem at the top. But no, it's actually cleared only when you grab this hidden dragon egg behind a wall. I'm not sure why. But anyway, after the task is done, you unlock some new dialogue from Magnus. He can randomly say either the pole spin reminder again, or this new line, which you might not have heard before.
Destroy the dark gem, Spyro! If you destroy enough, you should be able to enter Nasty Nork's lair. Maybe you could redecorate a little.
Let's look at the part of the game script that randomly picks which of these lines to play. You can see that there are actually 3 cutscenes being referenced here. The one at the top is the pole spin reminder, the second one is the redecorating line, the one at the bottom is one that we don't get to see. The code here gets a random number between 0 and 2 using the rand command and puts it into a variable. Then it selects a different cutscene depending on what number was put in that variable, so 0, 1, or 2. The mistake here is the input they used for the rand command. How the command works is that you give it an input, and then the output is a random number from 0 and up to but not including the input. So an input of 2 would actually only result in either 0 or 1 and never 2. So looking at the code again, this bottom cutscene will never be picked because rand 2 will never actually output 2. We can fix this by simply giving it an input of 3 instead, and after patching the map file, we get to see it in-game.
Be on your way now, Spyro. I'm busy brewing up a new magical broth.
Very cool. Magnus isn't the only Elder to have this specific mistake. The exact same thing happens in Elder Titan's game script, so he also has an unused line that can be revealed by changing a 2 to a 3. Here it is.
Okay, Spyro, better not stand around all day. Looks like you've got to save the world again. And I've got to go eat my pudding. I like pudding.
There is another blunder with Titan's game script, the effects of which you might have seen before. If you walk inside a certain range around him, he'll settle into a reacting stance, with his head raised. If you walk outside that range, he'll slump back down to his normal idle stance. However, if you stand at just the right distance, he'll start to glitch out and do this flickering motion. The game script is coded such that Titan will start reacting to the player if they are within 2700 centimeters of him, and he will stop reacting if the player is more than 2600 centimeters away. You might already notice the problem. If you stand between 2600 and 2700 centimeters away, Titan will try to start reacting and stop reacting at the same time, which makes him sort of flicker between the two states. If you simply swap around the 2700 and 2600 ranges, the issue is gone, so that's what I assume the intention here was. Next up is Elder Aster. After you have learned Wall Kick, Aster will simply repeat the same line of dialogue.
Don't forget, Spyro, to wall kick, simply jump onto a wall, and a moment or two after landing, jump again. Simple, isn't it?
If we look at the game script, there is actually a section where it randomly picks between one of 3 lines, but that code is completely skipped over for whatever reason. It will never run under any circumstance, and will instead always just pick the same one. First, we can patch the code to not skip over it. But if you notice, they once again used the rand command wrong, so we once again have to change the 2 to a 3. The first of these cutscenes is just the line that normally plays, but the 2 others are never seen. The first of the unused cutscenes is this one.
I've been the least helpful Dragon Elder so far, haven't I? Don't answer that!
Pretty amusing. The last one is... well, it's nothing. There's no data in this cutscene, so it just ends immediately. My guess is that they wanted to make the script pick a random cutscene, but they hadn't finished making them all yet, so they temporarily made the code only pick the first one that they had completed. But then they never ended up making the third cutscene, leaving it empty, and they never re-enabled the code that picked the random cutscene, leaving the second one unused. In any case, it's very strange. But I saved the strangest game script for last. Take a look at this basket in Dragonfly Falls. At first glance, there's nothing unusual about it, but if you look closer... well, there's still nothing unusual, but under the hood it's pretty weird. This basket, or vase as it's actually called in the code, yes, that is what all baskets are called, has an NPC's game script attached to it. Now, since the basket, isn't an NPC, it ends up doing nothing, and it just acts like a normal basket. When I looked at the code for this basket's game script, I thought it looked like a strange and incomplete version of the game script used by the nearby Hunter NPC. So out of curiosity, I replaced Hunter's game script with the basket's game script, and this was the result. Closing this text box crashes the game here, because the game script doesn't load the files it needs to make the player switch to Hunter. But this is clearly a much earlier version of the interaction between Spyro and Hunter that was just left on some random object in the level. Interestingly, it's pretty similar to the interaction seen in the demo builds of the game, except there the switch works as intended. I have no idea why this game script ended up attached to this basket. Perhaps it was just a misclick by a dev that went unnoticed. Anyway, that's all I had to show this time. What do you think of the unused cutscenes? I myself think it's a shame that the ones with the Professor and the Elders don't play normally. The fact that they don't play is, I think, clearly a mistake, since they're all appropriate and in character. So I made a patch to the game to remedy this and restore them to how they were probably intended. The Professor's unused line has its requirement changed from not having double jump to not having pole spin, and the game scripts for the Elders have been changed to also pick the unused cutscenes. Titan's game script has the alert ranges swapped so the flickering animations are gone. You can download the patch in the description below, alongside the tool I made to decompile the game scripts. Have fun and thanks for watching.